Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Mind Over Money, a show where we talk on ways how meditation, yoga, and behavioral science can help you become a better and more efficient trader, investor, as well as a better human being. Well, my name is Shatajanand, and today we have with us a very special guest, Hena Mehta, who is a CEO and co-founder at Basis, which is India's financial services destination for women. Welcome to the show, Hena.
Thank you, Shataj.
Well, Hena, thank you for being part of the show. And you have your own startup, and at times things could get really stressful. So, how do you manage stress, and is there any specific routine you follow?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily view stress as completely a bad thing, right? A healthy amount of stress actually pushes us towards our goals, keeps us motivated. Of course, when stress starts leading to more negative emotions, right? Whether it's a lack of productivity or anxiety or not feeling adequate enough, then it absolutely needs to be addressed, right? So yes, running a startup comes with its own set of stresses, but there are a few things that I've learned over the years that help me combat, the negative stress to some extent, at least, right? So, a few tactics that have worked for me include, chalking out very deliberate times on my calendar for specific activities, right? In your introduction, you mentioned things like yoga or meditation, right? Just having very clear blocks of time on my calendar, very explicitly put. Let's say if it's 30 minutes of yoga or even if it's 10 minutes of meditating, right? I try to do this for a certain number of times over the week. And that just helps, manage or alleviate whatever stress that may be there. The second thing is about controlling your immediate environment, right? So this could be two things. One is your physical environment. So, I mean, right now I'm working from home, and as we know, there's pros and cons to that.
True.
Right? But I always find myself, sometimes de-stressing if I just physically remove myself from this environment, which can sometimes get stressful in different ways. And speaking of an immediate environment, also the people you surround yourselves with, right? This could be, close family, friends, your colleagues. It could be adding to your stress if you're surrounded by people who drain you, right? So to the extent I can control it, I try to surround myself with people who actually strengthen me and energize me as well. A couple of other things that have worked are obviously where, as entrepreneurs specifically, we have all set out these super ambitious, audacious visions and goals for ourselves, and a lot of them are fairly medium to long term. But if there are ways to really break down those goals and ambitions into smaller chunks and celebrate those wins more frequently, right, that also helps continue to keep you motivated and alleviate some of the stress. And the last thing I would say is, and this, a lot of women tend to, deal with this challenge about setting boundaries, right? We tend to say yes to a lot more than we can handle, right? This could be on the personal front, social, professional, you name it, right? So being very mindful of, our limitations, prioritizing and setting those boundaries really helps, because the last thing we want is we've stretched ourselves too thin, we're overextending ourselves, and then at the end of the day, getting more stressed as a result of that.
True. Understood. And in fact, beautifully put there, and let me also go across and understand, about how women investors who are, housewives or could be in job to manage mental health and stay calm, even, if the boats get rocked by storm of volatility.
Right. So, investing, regardless of gender, can get stressful, right?
True.
We've seen over the last 2 years some crazy market volatility. Of course, temperament helps a lot, right? You talked about women investors. There are lots of studies that have shown that the temperament of women actually make us better long-term investors, right? We tend to stay calm under pressure and things like that. So I think that's an inherent, strength or something that we're just wired to do. But in terms of something more tactical, Kshitij, it's about just tuning out the noise, right? Market volatility is in the name of the game, right? If we're in the market, especially, as long-term investors, chances are we'll see multiple, downturns, we'll see a bunch of just, volatility as we're, as we're building our portfolios. So just tuning out the noise. One hack that I use, or I tell folks who ask me this question, is around just when you see, something stressful or your portfolio in the red or markets just going all over the place, just like turn off your computer or your phone or whatever and just go exercise, right? This is helpful for your mind, your body, and your portfolio because you're not taking reactive decisions to what you're seeing, right? So that would be my tip to any investors. And of course, most of us, investing by itself means you're, in it for the long haul, and just telling ourselves that short-term volatility is just short-term, right? Markets are cyclical and do tend to, go up and down. And like I said, that's just the name of the game. And we just need to tell ourselves that.
Absolutely. So what is the mantra to become more productive?
So this is highly personal, right? I know there'll be like, you do a Google search on productivity hacks, etc. You'll find a lot of different tips and tricks, etc. But I think one of the things to understand is this is super personal, right? What may work for you may not work for me. I can obviously try to learn from others, but I don't have to necessarily copy paste, some, I don't know, CEO who wakes up at 5 a.m. and, does like 10 different things before he or she's at her desk or his desk before work, right? So I think internalize that it's a very personal thing of understanding your own rhythms and patterns, right? Become your own data analytics expert, right? Just understand how productive you are with different tasks. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? And even over the course of the day, are there specific kinds of tasks that you think you get done more efficiently at particular times of the day, right? And like one of the things I noticed recently, so I do some of the content that basis our startup builds for women and money and personal finance. And I realized my creative juices for that particular function tend to flow more in the morning, right? Before the craziness of the day begins. And so I've just kind of planned out my day based on that finding, right? So I think just understanding these patterns about yourself and knowing that what works for someone else may not necessarily work for you, right? I think that's one key productivity hack. Another thing is taking frequent breaks, right? These are so underrated. And sometimes, when we're, in the midst of different things, we're just like, let's just power through the day and get something done. But breaks are extremely underrated, right? The same task that is taking you a certain amount of time can be done far more efficiently just with a short break, right? A short walk, or go grab some coffee, chat with a friend, chat with a colleague, whatever it may be, right? So I think taking those breaks, just unplugging, even if it's for a little while, does tend to just help you reset, right? We see overheated machines and devices need to just cool down before they can be, properly functional again. And I don't think, it's any different for us as well. And the last thing I'd say about productivity, Kshitij, is, we're living in a world where it's so ruthlessly competitive that it's hard to be kind to yourself, right? So I think compassion for yourself, you don't have to do, 20 different things. It's better to do, let's say, 3 things really well than like stretch yourself, spread yourself too thin, try to be extra productive and try to get 20 things done because everyone around you seems to be, doing all this awesome stuff. And so I think just being compassionate and I think just being smart about how you allocate your time and more importantly, energy is what will contribute more positively to productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, golden words from you, Hina. The final question I wanted to ask you. In fact, you repeated this in the interview as well. Turning off, for some time is great that you've already mentioned, but it is easier said than done. We all know that. So, how do you manage to do that? Any routine that investors should follow around it?
Yeah, so there's this concept in behavioral science and behavioral economics. By the way, I'm a huge fan of behavioral economics. It's a very, very interesting field and very applicable to our day-to-day lives, right? So there's this concept called a commitment device, right? Essentially, what that is you design your life, or you do something. It's a thing that you voluntarily create for yourself in order to maximize your chances of achieving a goal, right? Okay. So in this case, let's say our goal was to turn off or unplug, right? Which absolutely 100%, right? It's far easier said than done. But in this case, an example of where a commitment device can be useful is, let's say you pay some good money to sign up for a workout class or a meditation class, right? Why that's effective is a commitment device by definition needs to be voluntary. So you need to sign up for it yourself, not someone else doing it for you. And two, there needs to be some kind of a cost associated with it. So if I don't go to this class, there's money down the drain, right? And the cost need not be financial. It could also be like social, right? I told a certain friend I would go to a class with them, and if I don't show up, it could, there might be a social cost associated, for instance, right? So this is an example of a commitment device, which I wouldn't say the word forces you, but just kind of maximizes your chances of following through with, let's say in this case, the goal is to turn off from work or whatever else you're doing, and do another activity which may recharge you. So I'm a big fan of this. I try to apply it to different things. They are very effective, even with things like saving money or even eating healthier. Right. So it could be a good behavioral hack to do all of this. And you mentioned the word routine, right? I'm a huge fan of routine and a structure to the day. Obviously, a lot in life is not in our control, right? But for the most part, if we can keep things on autopilot. So I touched upon this in the first response, and like deliberately, let's say, chalking out time blocks in the day to do certain things, then, it just becomes a thing you do every day. You don't necessarily need to, think about it, right? So turning off can be that's just part of your routine. And, okay, it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, this is my time to turn off. I'd either, spend some time with family, or I'll do some exercise, or I'll go meet a friend, or whatever, that activity may be for you. So I'm a huge fan of routine, a disciplined schedule, to the extent possible, of course. Being flexible, as entrepreneurs, of course, we do need to be okay with that uncertainty, but to the extent where we can introduce certainty in a routine, it can be highly effective.
No, in fact, some of the things that you mentioned, I could also relate to it. Whenever there's an activity or there's a cost involved in it, then there's a different type of motivation behind you to actually go and do that task. So in fact, I could also relate to it. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time, Hena, and that's all for now, folks. But do say log on to etmarkets.com for more on news, business, and economy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.